Okay, perfect. So hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We're so excited to have five wonderful professors here to talk to us about applying to grad school, their experience in grad school, and any other advice that they have. So we can start off with introductions. If each professor could just introduce themselves and say like where they went to school, what they studied, and if they attended grad school right after their undergraduate graduation, or if they like took some time in between, that would be great.
I can start. Yeah, so first of all,
Perfect.
I would like to thank the Society of Women Engineers for inviting me here. I'm so excited. My name is Sara Tehranipoor, and I'm currently Assistant Professor in Electrical and Computer Engineering Department. I actually joined last fall 2019. Before that, I was Assistant Professor in San Francisco State University for 2 years, from 2017 to 2019. And right before I come to West Coast, like 2 days before that, I got my PhD from University of Connecticut in 2017. Yeah, so when I got my bachelor in Iran, I immediately admitted to one of the universities in Tehran for master. And then right after that, I came to United States for my PhD program degree study. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Kendall, it might help if you direct, if you sort of set an order to
Yeah.
whenever
Okay.
you speak.
Yeah, perfect. How about Dr. Ackerman, you go, and then I'll say the next professor
Okay,
as
wonderful.
we finish.
Really, really great to be here and great to have so many other faculty here as well. So I'm Maya. I'm a professor in our computer science and engineering department. I studied in Canada in the University of Waterloo. I did all my degrees back to back. So undergrad, master's, PhD. Then I had two postdocs, one at Caltech and one at UC San Diego. And this is my third faculty position. My first one was at Florida State, then San Jose State for a year. And this is my fourth year here now.
Thank you. Dr. Mobed, how about you go next?
Sure. Thank you for the invitation. It's good to see everyone. So I did all my studies in Montreal, Canada, at McGill, back to back. I took a small break right after my undergrad. I worked for a few months before coming back to school. And after my PhD, I came to the Bay Area. I worked for 12 years in industry, diagnostics, genomics, medical device. And then I started teaching at San Jose State for 5 years. And then currently I've been here since 2013. That's my story.
Perfect. Thank you. How about Dr. Sefferband goes next?
Sure. So it's great to be here. So I'm Panthea Sefferband. Like Sarah, I am from Iran. So I did my undergrad in Iran and I did my master's in Iran as well. And then I went to Canada for my PhD. I didn't do them back to back. So for each of them, between my undergrad and my master's, I worked for a year. And then between my master's and PhD, I also worked for a year because I was not sure if I wanted to do a graduate school or not. So if like anyone had any question about like how I made the decision, I can talk about that later. I joined after my PhD at University of Waterloo, like Maya. So we went to the same school. I did my PhD at University of Waterloo. I did a postdoc at University of Waterloo as well for a year. And then I joined Santa Clara 2012. And it is in mechanical engineering department.
Thank you so much. And then we'll finish it off with Dr. T.
Okay, hi, Tonya Nilsson, Dr. T. Also, thanks for the invite. Happy to see everyone. And it's also fun to see my colleagues who I haven't seen in a long time. So I actually did my undergrad at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and then I was a December grad. So I had a 9-month break working on a NSF grant, still at the university, and then went to Stanford for a master's. And then I worked in industry. It was probably 5 years later that I returned, got a chance to try teaching and went, aha. So then I went back for a PhD. I was tenured associate professor at CSU Chico was my first position. I left there in 2005, worked back in industry, engineering climbing gyms for a while, and then have been at Santa Clara since 2010. Oh, and I did my PhD at UC Davis. Sorry.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing your story so far. So I guess for the next bundle of questions, it's just kind of like, why did you choose to pursue higher education, and like how attending grad school has like impacted your career? Does anyone want to start off in particular?
I could start. Okay, so why did I attend grad school and how did it impact my career? So I went into computer science because I tried, well, actually, I wasn't sure what to do for university. I talked to my dad, who's a programmer. He's like, you should try being a programmer. Like, okay. I tried it in class, loved it, was really good at it. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go to school, be a programmer, make a good living. Went to school, tried an internship in Sun Microsystems. Hated it. Not discouraging anybody from industry, just no aspect of it worked for me. So I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? I loved studying it, hated industry. So I'm like, okay, why don't I try teaching? And in Waterloo, we had this very extensive tutoring program where you essentially worked full-time every other 4 months. And if you could get it, you could work as a full-time tutor. So essentially like a TA, but full-time. And luckily I got the position and loved it. So I thought, okay, I think maybe I'd want to teach in college, but you need a PhD for that. So like, I don't know how that's going to work out, but let's see, let's give it a shot. So I did a master's and fell in love with research, like head over heels, fell in love with it. And by the time I was finishing up my master's, I had no question. There's no doubt in my mind that I wanted to do a PhD. I couldn't imagine doing anything else. And after that, it was just sort of the academic path felt like the only natural option.
Perfect. Thank you. Dr. Mobed, do you think that maybe you could talk about your experience with grad school and like why you chose to pursue higher education even after you like went into industry?
Sure. So my third year of undergrad, I was confused like a lot of my classmates. We were not sure if we had made the right choice. And I go to this talk, to this research talk, and I meet this professor and I say, okay, I want to do what he wants to do. And I figured that if I want to do what he wants to do, I don't have a choice. I have to go to graduate school. So right after graduation, I applied to get into his lab, me and 3-4 other students. And then he said that there were no fellowships, left. And I started working in a consulting firm, and it was a really good job, really interesting, high-paying job. But all my colleagues were my age right now, so I can, you can imagine. So the social, I mean, put it this way, there was nobody my age working there. And I know this is a silly, very, very silly argument. And the recession was coming also. They told me, go back to school because in 3-4 months, the recession will hit. And believe me, you're one of the young ones. You were not going to be saved. So go back, choose something that you like, even if you don't like, and then transfer. And then towards the end of the summer, I got an email from the professor saying that I have a fellowship. So I rushed to the lab, and it just worked out. But it was very good, this 3-4 months of working, to get a feel for an angle, right? You will never have a job that's going to expose you to everything, but it still exposes you to the expectations of ethical design, delivery, consequence, and you touch it puts your education also in perspective in terms of the things that they made you learn, and now you know why you learned them, you're actually applying them. So I'm very grateful for that gap that really made me work before rushing back. I don't know if I answered your question.
Oh no, that was so helpful. Thank you. I know that a lot of people, I mean, obviously we have COVID going on. And so I know a lot of people are considering maybe going to grad school because sometimes the job market is up in the air. So I think what you had to say was very helpful.
You're welcome.
Yeah, Dr. T.
Yeah. So when I was a junior, like so many others, right, was questioning my degree choice. And I never had a female professor. I basically had a bunch of almost all old white men, and one old, he was Chinese man, and that was it, right? So everything was taught so dry. And it was like, these are the formulas, this is what we do, boom. And I just was like, I'm not going to have ability to make an impact or do something that's good for people. I'm a civil engineer. I make your buildings safe so they don't fall down in earthquakes. That's huge, right? But I didn't have that perspective. And so I thought I needed to go get a master's so that I could, one, I was structural engineering. You kind of need a master's a lot of times for that anyways. But I thought I wanted to get my master's, work in industry enough to get my license so that I could say, okay, I have some sort of prestige or clout, or like I know what I'm talking about, and then take my degree and do something else with it. And so that was the only reason that I initially went to go get my master's, is I thought that will help me figure out something else to do with this degree, but I don't want to sit in an office and work. But because I did want to get licensed, I did sit in an office and I worked for a few years so that I could become a licensed civil engineer. And then I went and traveled. I went to South America for 6 months to find myself, and it does not work if you're not looking for yourself and only having fun traveling. So I had a great time, but I came back just as confused, but it was awesome. And I got an opportunity to teach, and it was during that process that I realized I could have an effect on people, and that I could be a role model, because I had never had a female teacher until actually Stanford. And then for me, I found teaching and I loved it. But I'm super grateful for the work experience, and that's why I went for a PhD. Had an opportunity at Stanford. I was invited to stay, and I was like, "You're crazy! Why would I do that?" The the teaching really worked for me, but even after I was teaching, like I said, I left my Chico position and I came to the Bay Area and I got back in industry, and I'm really grateful for my industry time, because I think that makes me better at teaching civil engineering, because I've applied it, and civil is such an, it's especially civil, right? We have codes, we have like, it's so I'm grateful I have both.
Thank you so much. Dr. Tehranipoor or Dr. Sefperban, do you have anything to add?
Sure, I can chime in. Yeah, I think in Iran, everything is a little bit different. Being engineer, lawyer, medical doctor is something everyone's do. So it's not like we go to a route that whatever we want to do. Our families are expecting us to be engineers, to be lawyers, and so on. This is different. But in terms of going for like higher education, I remember when I was a senior, I had a professor that I was working with him on my senior design project, basically, but it was more research based. And that was a time that I found that, oh, it looks like that I liked to do research. And if you want to go for master degree in Iran, you have to, in the last year, that means when you're senior, you have to do I'm pretty sure Dr. Sefperban and Dr. Mobed knows this. It's a very tough exam, which is called concours. That's the entrance exam for any level, like bachelor, master, and PhD. So I attended the exam. I got admitted in Tehran, and I went there, and I loved research again. I think that was the time I knew that 70–80% I'm going to be a professor in my future. So yeah, and then I applied for PhD, and I came here. So I think, in my opinion, some of the things happening in the life, it's not just you decided beforehand, it's just happen. But as long as you like it, when it happens, then it works to continue. So this is my experience.
Thank you for sharing. Dr.
Sure.
Sefperban?
Yeah, sure. So I was a little lost when I was doing my undergrad. I didn't know what exactly I wanted to do. So like what Tanya said, so when I was doing my undergrad, I thought that I want to see what is the impact of what I'm learning. So I thought that I want to go and work in a factory. I wanted to work on a like manufacturing line and see the results, feel the results. I did it. I did it for like, I did a kinds of an extended internship. And during that time, I realized that this is not something that I really like to do for my whole life. I wanted to do something like in another level that involves some level of research. So I went back to school and I did my master's. So I took the exam and I got admitted and I did my master's. And then I thought that's it. I don't want to do a PhD. I specifically remember the last exam that I had for my undergrad. I thought that would be the last exam that I will have for my entire life. I'm done with taking exams.
I said the same thing.
And then I did my master's. And then I worked for a year. And then I realized that no, it's not exactly what I was looking for. I want to do more research. And I was not interested in teaching at all back then. So I applied and I went to Canada as an international student. And I was doing research and I had to be a TA for the financial support. So I did a TA. And when I did it, I realized that how much I love teaching. And I really, really enjoyed it. And at that time, I said that, okay, how can I balance the two things? I want to do research, I want to teach. And then at that point, I realized that I really want to have a faculty position. And then I applied to Santa Clara. I got the job, and I think this is the best decision that I made. It took me like longer, but when I made the decision, I really knew what I wanted to do.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing. I know I appreciated hearing your stories. And just as someone who is also questioning like what I want to do, it's encouraging to hear that like you guys who are also like, you guys have like gone so far and have done such great things, like also did have some like doubts at the beginning as well. So I guess to kind of like pivot to more of like the like application part of like grad school, I was just hoping to ask you guys like how you chose the school you attended and like how you decided what kind of school or program that you wanted to go to. I know that Dr. Tehranipoor kind of talked about how she had like a test to take and everything, but if anyone else can share how they decided to choose their program, that'd be great. Maybe Dr. Tehranipoor, do you want to start if you have anything to add to what you said before?
Sure. You mean for my PhD? That's what you're asking?
Oh, I'm talking about grad school. So if I confused your programs, I apologize.
Yeah, I was in electrical and computer engineering. That was I did for my bachelor, and I continued in my master, and I also continued for my PhD. There were times when I was PhD. Actually, that's funny. In our school, in our department, most of the classes, you might ask me this later, but most of the classes were like all men and I was the only female in the class. It was really hard. It was really hard being in a class that everyone are male and the professor is male and you're the only one there. It's hard. Sometimes I was thinking maybe I switched to a little bit more female oriented majors like computer science. But then no, I stick to it. So my bachelor was in computer engineering, more like on hardware side, computer hardware engineering. My master and PhD was also in the same program. Am I answering your question?
Oh yeah, thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Dr. T, do you think you could share about how you decided which like grad school you'd want to go to?
There were really for me two things. I mean, one, obviously, the reputation of the school, what the faculty there were doing, especially for my master's. Cornell, Berkeley, Indiana, or Illinois, Urbana, and Stanford were sort of the top schools for structural engineering. And I visited Berkeley, got a horrible vibe, didn't want to go, wasn't going to move to Illinois. And so I applied to Cornell and Stanford. And then when I was picking, I came down to whether or not I had to buy a winter coat. Not gonna lie. And then for my PhD, That one actually was also a personal choice, because my husband and I were just suddenly serious in a relationship. And fortunately, I made the right choice. I wanted to stay local because, now 20 some odd crazy years later. But so I chose UC Davis. They had a great program. There was somebody there I really wanted to work under, and geographically it worked for me. And so as long as a school has a good reputation and there's someone there you can work with, or you're excited about something they're doing, I think that, and you don't have to buy 14 down coats.
Right. Thank you. Dr. Ackerman, do you have anything to add about how you chose a grad program?
So I did all my education in the same school, which is generally not recommended in North America, which, by the way, North America is a little unusual in that way. In other continents, if you switch universities, people wonder why didn't people want to keep you there. So it's a bit idiosyncratic here. And my PhD advisor, who I had the same advisor for my master's and PhD, said something really smart, which I think is true. And if some of the faculty have a different opinion, please let me know. He said that once nobody cares about anything but your last degree. So it doesn't matter if you do all your education in the same place, because nobody's going to look what you did before your last degree anyways. So it's a lot less important. I loved Waterloo. I knew all the faculty. We had 100 faculty. It's a massive department. And I worked with many different professors and had a very smooth ride. The one advantage, and again, I'm not necessarily advocating for it, but one advantage of staying in the same institution is often you already satisfy some of the requirements. So for example, I know in my department, if you do your master's here, if you did your undergrad here and you do your master's here, then it's actually a little bit of an easier master's as a result. And that's pretty normal in other universities too. I'll stop here.
Thank you. Dr. Sefferband, do you have anything to add, especially since you went to Waterloo at some point?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So I had a completely different mentality than Maya when I was deciding where to go. So when I did my undergrad, I thought that, okay, I studied at this university, I learned a lot, and I know faculty. So let's go to another school and explore it. So I went to another school that was one of the best at our country. And something that I didn't pay attention is that Dr. T said that I didn't pay attention who I want to work with. So I went for my master's. It was a great school, but the project that I was working on and the advisor that I was working on at the beginning, it was not something that I really wanted. So I ended up collaborating with my previous school. So I had a co-advisor from my previous school. So I was working with both university. And then for my PhD, then it was mainly, so I knew that University of Waterloo is a good university. And also it was mainly the faculty that I was working with. It was in the area that I wanted to do my research. So I directly talked to that faculty, see if she had any opening and if she was looking for a new student. And that's how I ended up at Waterloo.
Perfect. And then Dr. Mobed, how did you choose your program?
So now we've gone through all the almost all the combinations possible, right? So I did my master's and PhD at the same institution for the reasons that were just mentioned. The person who I was working with, the work was not going to get finished in 2 years, or it really needed more time. Or X years. I also want to say that wherever you go, you need to feel like the school is big enough so you can talk to many people about the scientific problems that you're solving, or at least one facet of it. And for me, I think the school was big enough so that I could talk to at least 2-3 professors with very different perspective of how the problem was going to get solved. So I also think that staying at the same place is certainly not a disadvantage because of the reasons that Dr. Ackerman mentioned. You can satisfy some of the requirements, but figuring out who you want to work with and what you want to do is important, because that gives you the drive, that gives you the passion, because there are going to be plenty of times that you wonder, why did I do this? I had a job or I was making money. Why am I doing this? So you really better be sure of, the person that you're working with.
If I could just chime in here really quickly,
Sure.
I'm in 100% agreement with my colleagues here about how critical your advisor is. I think it's very hard to imagine as a student how working with advisor A versus advisor B is completely night and day. And the number one reason that people don't finish a PhD, which actually happens surprisingly frequently, is because of a poor match. It happens all the time. So it's advisor over everything. That's why I stayed in Waterloo for so long. I actually switched advisors right away twice in a row, almost instantly. Then found the right advisor the third time and stuck with him for my education.
Thank you so much for adding that. Yeah. Yeah, advisors are a big deal. So thank you for emphasizing that to all of us.
Can I just add something?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, so the reason actually I went to University of Connecticut for my PhD was I had my family members there. But as everyone said, I was very lucky also working with someone as my PhD advisor that I could really work with, because that's number one and key if you want to go for a PhD. I see a lot of students when they do master actually in our department and they talk to me, I'm not saying going to a top school is a bad idea, it's excellent idea, but it's not just going to top school, because you might go to top school, but you're not working with someone that is 100% in your area, you know what I mean? So it's really important that when you apply for a PhD program, just go and find a faculty that works in your area, and then beyond that, the person that you can work with that. It's a little bit hard to figure that out. And I know that professors, they're like this and they know what I'm talking about, but the most important thing for doing PhD and master, if you want to go for a research, is that you work with someone that understands you, and that person works in your area. That's the key point. So if you are admitted in top school number 5, rank 5, or top school rank 15, but you feel like the advisor in school rank 15, when I talk to him or her, he or she understands me better and I'm working more in his or her area, just select that one. Don't just go to school rank number 5 because that's rank number 5. That's very important.
And if I can add on to this, and I think it will actually sort of get to one of the other questions you had, Kendall, because you've got to be, I'm assuming some of our audience is thinking, well, how would I even know? How would I even know? Right? So it's really important. Not only do you get on the website and you look and you read what are faculty doing, but every place that has a graduate school has graduate admissions officers. And it's not just, like you're used to as undergrad that there's the registrar's office, right? Now, the registrar's office might look at your application just to make sure you meet the minimum requirements of the department, but it is not the registrar's office that lets you in at the end into your department. It's the department that lets you in. And so either the School of Engineering, or even at a big school at Davis, it wasn't the School of Engineering, it was the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering that had their own graduate officers. And so you reach out to those people and you say, I'm interested in coming there. Can you set up some meetings for me? Now, it's tough in COVID. Berkeley wouldn't even set up meetings for me, but Stanford did. And I knew people at Cornell. And that was one of the things that turned me off Berkeley. But it's just my personality. I don't want to be one in 25 million gazillion thousand people. Just not, I'm small town. So, but I was able to go and I met with faculty and I talked with faculty before I ever even applied. And you could do that over Zoom, and it's in their best interest too, because, Dr. Sepperban said, that she reached out and do you have a position and do you have something? The faculty are looking at the graduate school applications. And so when they get to 2 people, let's say they get down to the bottom, or like we have 1 spot, we have 2 people left. Oh, by the way, person A came and I met them and they were passionate and they talked to me about my research. I'm voting for person A over person B because I've never heard of person B. right? And so even if it's a Zoom call, even if it's an email trade, you follow up with thank you letters, you tell them how excited you are to come there. You know, there's all of that networking, because grad school is about networking way more than undergrad. Okay.
Yeah, can I just add a quick thing? So reach out to the advisor. It is the same way that they are, it is like a job. They're interviewing you. You are also interviewing them. So make sure that it is a good match. And also, if you get a chance, talk to the students that are working with the advisor. So when I'm admitting students to my group, I always connect them to other students in my group, and I ask them to go and talk to them and see what is the environment, see if it is something that works for you. If the advisor does that, that's great. If he or she doesn't, maybe you can find some students in the group that you can talk to and get some information, specifically for PhD, because it is a long commitment. So you want to make sure that the whole environment is a way that you can work at.
If I can just add just another quick thing into here, sort of tying back to sticking with the same university again. Not always the right choice. But one advantage that you get, which is very, very serious, is, for example, if you do your master's where you did your undergrad, you know the professors. You actually know them. And I actually personally don't hire students that I have not worked with. So it's actually, I mean, maybe I will at some point, but I've never hired a student that essentially didn't do the previous degree at my institution, because this relationship between student and advisor is really about fit. And it's very, very hard to tell, even if you meet a few times. Sure, it's a lot better, it's infinitely better than not meeting. But you don't really know unless you somehow work with that person a little bit. And so if you do a master's where you did your undergrad, you can pick a professor that you know very well. And same thing, if you stay for a PhD where you did your master's, you get the same advantage. And that's really, really big. And finally, and this is critical, and not a lot of people will tell you this, if you end up in a bad situation where you have an advisor who doesn't make time for you, an advisor who's clearly doesn't care about your research interests, somebody who's not really contributing to you graduating with your degree in a way that you want it to happen, switch advisors. It's okay to switch. So just don't forget that.
Thank you so much for all of this great info. Like I'm taking notes. So I think I'm going to ask one more question so that we can leave at least about 15 minutes for the students here to ask questions. So my last little bundle of questions is like, what would your advice be to your like former self or students who are applying to grad school now? And like, what's your advice on how students can become competitive at grad school when they're applying? We've already kind of touched on like really reaching out to those departments and like getting to know the faculty and stuff. But if you guys have anything else to add, please do so. Maya, would you want to start? Or sorry,
Sure.
Dr. Ackerman.
Maya is fine. So the most important thing is prior research record. We are in the beginning of the year. Even if you've never done research before, you have time. If you're doing a senior design project, maybe you could publish it. So there is nothing that communicates research capability like a published paper. Even a draft of a paper that's arXived, that's sort of or in submission. Otherwise, it's a complete gamble for the professor. So I would say the number one thing is to publish something, work with somebody in your undergrad.
Thank you. Dr. T.
So I would, two things. One, a lot of schools really look at letters of recommendation, and you may or may not see the forms that we get, but they're asking, would you rank this person in the top 1 percentile? Would you rank them in the top 5 percentile? Would you rank them in the top 10 percentile? And sometimes it's overall as a person, and sometimes it's, you know, in certain areas, right? And what I wasn't told, I missed out on getting like a fellowship grant money at Cornell because one person ranked me in the top 10 and everyone else ranked me higher. And it must have been based on like my involvement and excitement because I wasn't the 4.0 student, but whatever. But you know, talk to the people who are going to write you letters. Don't, you know, yes, you feel grateful, but don't just be like, oh my God, thank you, and just run away with it. Run away and be like, they wrote me a letter. Like when you ask them, would you be willing to rate me in a top? Is there something about me that you can feel comfortable giving me a high rating? And if they say no, find someone else, because for some schools, if you can't even get past that, they're not going to look at you. And then the other thing I want to address is your statement of purpose is so critical. And it's also a really great place to address things. I was a first gen, I did junior college, then I transferred. Like, I am not your typical go off and get a PhD sort of path, let alone, or a master's. When I transferred, switching from semester to quarter, I struggled that first quarter. My grades weren't that great. But I rocked my GREs, and I also had to work full-time in school, and then I was not full-time, I worked full-time just in junior college, part-time in school, and I was super involved. So that also made it hard for me to get high grades. I just didn't have time. And so I addressed that in my statement of purpose, but I was able to say, look at this work I did over here with this professor doing research. Look at my GRE scores. Obviously, I'm capable if I actually had the opportunity to put 100% in school, which I was just not able to do given my circumstances of having to work my way through school. So use your statement of purpose to address any weaknesses head on. Don't try to hide it.
Thank you. Any other professors have anything to add? Dr. Mobed, maybe?
Sure. I think that the previous suggestions are very valuable. I think another way is to, if you really want to work with someone, of course, a paper is important, the statement of purpose, and all of those are really critical elements of the application. I think you should start reading what they do and develop some type of interest in what they do. And this interest needs to be genuine, because everybody figures out who likes what they do, and we kind of know the level of the students entering with some questions and things we can figure out. So what I've asked some of my own students is, if you find somebody that you want to work with, research what they're working on, and then if you have some questions regarding that area, technical area, you can come back and we can sit down together, help you a little bit more. So when you want to establish contact with them, by the first email, your genuine interest comes in and you can carry a conversation. I think getting prepped is at a human level, because you're going to establish contact, is also important. So that would be my advice. Do your work. Just like when you want to meet somebody, you go and check out their profiles. I don't know how this is done these days, but you really need to go. You're about to establish human contact. Study them and get some help interpreting what they do and what they could relate to. That would be and it has to be genuine. Otherwise, everybody is very emotionally intelligent. They'll figure out what you're up to. That would be my input.
Thank you, Dr. Mobed. Dr.
Can I just add
Seffervan,
something?
or Dr. Tehranipoor, yeah, go for it.
No, go ahead. Okay. Yeah, so that's completely correct. So the whole package is important. So I get a lot of applications from like international students and people in the United States. And when I look at the applications, I see that some people are like having excellent CV, but then their SOP is really poor. But then we see in the department level, because we look at all the applications, people are having high GRE and TOEFL score, but then their letter of support from their referees are like poor. So what I'm saying is that the whole package is important. Put time for every element. We want students to have excellent CV showing their interest, research, if they have published papers, having a strong SOP, having a strong letter of recommendations. You know what I mean? So everything there is important. Just put time for each of these elements to make it strong.
Thank you. And Dr. Seffervan, do you want to finish it off?
Yeah, sure. Like, I think everything was discussed. So part of it, a lot of it is on your side, working on your package, doing research. But a little bit of it goes to the people that they write the recommendation letter for you, as Dr. T said. So make sure that you ask people write you the letter that they know you, and help them in writing the letter. So give them enough time. So don't ask the last minute. Even if you have done really, really great, if you just give them 2-day notice, they cannot write you a good letter. So give them enough time and help them, like highlight things that you would like them to address in your letter. That would help us to write you better letter. And always ask the faculty, just don't ask if you can write me a letter. Ask if they can write you a strong recommendation letter, and if they can rank you highly, and if they have enough information to do that.
I just think it's so great that you just pointed that out. I was also told to ask to write a strong letter. I've actually, probably all of us, have seen cases, either on ourselves or people that we know well, people who are very, very smart, who didn't get into good universities, who didn't get scholarships because of one poor choice of letter writer. So please try to overcome your shyness. Everybody has trouble asking, can you write me a strong letter? I have students asking me to write letters all the time, and I've sort of learned to say no if I can't be of very strong support. Please do not get offended when we say no. If somebody says no, they're helping you. I think, and maybe if my colleagues disagree, please chime in. When a professor asks you to write it, it's one thing if they ask you to write some notes, but if they ask you to write the letter, I think that means you're not going to get strong support. So if they tell you, yeah, sure, I'll write it for you. Can you write it? I'll just sign it. Find someone else. This is not a strong letter. And if you don't ask if it's going to be a strong letter, you're really putting all of your hard work in massive risk. So ask and be okay with a no, because sometimes somebody who knows you less can actually like you more and believe in you more. So it's not just how well they know you. And I had one student do something recently, so I think it's important to point out this mistake. Don't worry about getting diverse letters by any stretch. I know the word diversity means something different these days, but don't worry about getting somebody who knows you from industry and somebody who knows you academically and somebody who knows you from something else. Nobody cares. Get people who like you and think good thoughts about you, think you're brilliant. That's all that matters. And yes, please help them. Those are excellent points. Okay, I mostly just agree with everything that was said.
Thank you so much for sharing everything. All this advice is so great. So I think now is a good time to open it up to questions from the students who are here. So if anyone has a question, feel free to unmute yourself and ask it, or you can send it in the chat to me and I can ask it. Either way is fine.
I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
I was talking to my neighbor who recently managed to complete her PhD in math, and she told me that out of everyone in her program, the people who persevered and stayed in and completed the program were people who had taken a break between their undergrad and graduate studies. Is that true in your experience?
From my personal experience in my field in computer science, it seems the opposite. It seems like some of the, a lot of people are part-time when they're in industry. Basically, I have not seen that, but I'll let my colleagues comment.
I would say I've seen both. I think it depends on the person. The one thing that I've seen that returning students bring is that they're now used to 8 to 5, very rigid. You sit down, you can work for long chunks, get it done. So when I went back for my PhD, I'd ride, there was a shuttle from Sacramento to Davis, and I'd be on the 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. shuttle. I'd come home on the 6 p.m. shuttle, and I typically didn't have to do homework at night. I just didn't have to, it was like, and my classmates were like, you're always ahead. I'm like, I'm not ahead. I'm doing the homework as it assigned, but I had a different work ethic that I hadn't developed. I would pull an all-nighter once a week in college, and I didn't ever go out. So it wasn't for fun, but because I was so overloaded with work and whatever as an undergrad, but it was all the time. It wasn't efficient that I learned in it working.
So can you clarify what it is taking a break?
Yeah, she was like people who have worked in industry for a year.
Oh, so that's your break. Okay.
Yeah. Not just traveling, although that is also awesome, but an
okay. I think the experiences vary. I think maybe working in industry will give you a sense of, do you really want to do this? Do I really want to do this job, and do I really want to continue, or I want something more in the realm of research? So I think, it kind of, clarifies that. Another thing that I wanted to bring up is sometimes you need to also leave maybe 10% of chance. If, let's say, there is a program that you don't get in immediately, and there is a job opportunity, it doesn't hurt taking that chance, applying yourself, getting some experience, and reapplying with more experience and a stronger intention. I remember in my early 20s, 2 years or 3 years seemed like such a long period of time. When I look back right now, you have so much time. So even if, the first time you try and you don't get what you want, it's nothing. You have so much time. Enjoy what's in front of you, take the opportunity, make the best of it, and apply with stronger intentions. Yeah. So I just wanted to add that.
To amplify what Dr. Mobed just said, there is no right path. There's really no right path, and it's really all about trying. I actually did try industry a couple of times because it was sort of built into our co-program. So it's not like I came in sort of without that experience, and I did end up eventually founding a company while being a professor sort of concurrently. So I do industry sort of in a different way, but unlike undergrad, which is sort of like you get the message, it's really important to go to school, you need to pick a good major, which is good advice early on. Grad school versus industry is very much a personal choice. So there is no dogma around it. There's no right answer.
Thank you so much. So then I got a question in the chat, and the question is, if you could give some advice on how to pay for grad school. I know that some professors talked about how they worked through school, but if you have any advice to students on that, that you could share. Yeah, Dr. Tehranipoor.
Yeah, so I think there are 3 different supports that you can get as far as I know. One is TA, that means teaching assistant. So the TA usually assigned from the department to students, to PhD students, for example, and you're helping the instructor being TA, right? Another one is called RA. It's a research assistant. You basically get paid from a grant from the advisor, and you do research. So you don't do teaching or anything, just do research and then publishing and so on. There's one other thing we had in University of Connecticut, UConn, was called GA, I think. So there are some jobs in this school that is not really related to your field, but you're helping other departments as a hourly work, but then they waive your tuition. I'm not sure if it's something that is in every school. Actually, there's some other things like fellowships and these things that you guys can apply. So there are different ways to get these RAs and TAs. For international students, it's different. Usually when we come to another country, we want from the beginning to have some kind of support because it's hard to manage that, to pay for it. But being here for you guys, I think it's easier to reach out to the department head, department chair, advisors, or again, look for something called GA. I'm not sure really what does that means, GA, but that's something I saw a lot in University of Connecticut, and actually a lot of my friends, international students, they didn't have advisor that has a grant support, or the department couldn't give them TA, but they could find GA, and then they could waive their tuition. They got paid some stipend monthly. So that's something that can help.
Yeah, if you can apply for fellowship, so that's the RA and TA, they are supported through the university that you apply to. They are limited number of TAs usually available. So usually most of the school, they have more number of applicants than the number of the TA position that they have. RA comes from the faculty, from the grants that the faculty has for some school, it comes from the school. Another thing is the fellowship. So you can apply for fellowship, different fellowships. So be familiar with the fellowships that they are available for your discipline and apply to them, and ask help from faculty that they are familiar with this type of fellowship to help you out with your application. If you get those fellowship, like for example, from NSF, from DARPA, from DOE, there are different organizations that they can give you that fellowship. If you get that, then that usually increase your chance of being admitted to anywhere that you want to, because you already have the money. So and you have been already filtered with your ability to do the research. So anyone, like most of the people, if they have opening, they would love to work with you. So don't forget the fellowship.
To say if you want a TA, you're super advantaged being a Santa Clara student because we teach you much more how to communicate. That was like the worst communication English ever. But so if you are applying for that, you really want to reinforce that you have these strong speaking and communication skills, because they're looking for that. And you can even ask your letters of recommendation writers to write that about you. With the fellowships, Dr. Sepperban mentioned the Department of Energy. One of the things the Department of Energy does is, they run the national laboratories that are all over. I think they still do. They did. Do they still? Anyone? But they do these, they still, regardless of whether or not they're running them, they do a ton of, you can do summer research experiences, just apply. And whether you're going up to Idaho or you're just up in Livermore at these national labs. I went one summer as part of a relationship building thing with my PhD professor. And someone there, well, they were so happy, like it created such a great relationship with who I worked with there. He's like, I don't want this to end, and I'm excited about what's with your faculty members. So they paid me a fellowship the rest of my PhD, and I TA'd. It was awesome. So getting in and even going for the Department of Energy just for the experience, if someone you're working with there likes you, they can help you also get a DOE fellowship.
I think my colleagues pretty much answered all the pragmatic aspects, but I want to build on what Dr. T was saying as far as how well funded you can get. Like if you really love research and you're really committed and you sort of get into it, you can end up with really good salary. I never really cared too much back then when I was very young about how much money I had. I just wanted to do what I wanted to do, and that was pretty much it. But I ended up getting paid more than some people who studied with me who were working in industry, because I got couple of the top scholarships, and I was a TA, and Canada doesn't tax this. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up with a salary on par with some professors in my department, actually. While that's towards the end, about the latter half of my PhD, I was extremely well funded without that even being an incredible priority for me. And then I got scholarships from the Canadian government to do a postdoc anywhere I wanted. So if you're really good at it, there really are a lot of opportunities. And another thing is that in engineering, at least in computer engineering, but I would guess in other aspects of engineering as well, you really have a chance to do well-paid internships over the summer. And that can go a very long way as well.
I wanted to second what Dr. Ackerman said. A lot of the students that I talk to, they see California as being the limit. And California, there are good schools, but not all the good schools are in California. And not all the good schools are in the US, and not all the good schools are in Canada. So I know that this is COVID time, and travel is restricted, and I'm saying a lot of non-practical, giving you non-practical suggestions. But oftentimes, if you want to come back to California to work, it's interesting. If you've gone elsewhere and done your studies, they will be very interested in taking you to see what you've learned elsewhere, as opposed to if you've stayed here, you've gone to a top school, and you've completed all your studies. So they really like this percolation, the term that they use. So don't limit yourself to just California. I know some of you may not want to go far from California. I know it's a great place to be. So, you know, the world is big and there are a lot of opportunities.
And in other countries, sometimes school is free. We just had an alumni come back and talk to our EWB kids. One of my students from 6 years ago, he was really interested in a program out of Germany, civil engineering, first world development, water. School's free. Got his master's there.
Yep.
Nice. Oh, England too, right? Isn't it free in England? So, woo.
I think England is free only for their citizens.
Oh, how crazy that is.
Perfect. Well, thank you for sharing. We just have a little bit of time left, but Betty sent a question in the chat. She said, do you have any advice on getting a master's versus directly applying to PhD programs after undergrad?
Honestly,
Yeah, I can add something.
Why don't you go?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Maya. Yeah, so I don't hire a PhD student if he or she doesn't have a master's degree. So because even as an undergrad, I was doing a lot of research. There might be students, like for example, I have 3 groups of senior design, and all these 3 groups, they're doing research because of this COVID-19 situation. They cannot use like hardware and devices, so they do more like research, right? But if I want to hire a PhD student, I definitely hire a student that had mastered. And the reason is that they have more experience on doing research. They're more prepared. Another thing is that I see often people get direct PhD position. Basically, they call it direct PhD. But then the thing is, they don't finish in 4 years. They usually finish like 5, 6, 7 years. So there's no point of going for direct. You know what I mean? So if you want to stay 6 years for your PhD, that means basically 2 years. The first 2 years is basically master. So what do you want to do that? If there is an opportunity, just get your master first and then go for PhD. I think, I'm not sure about the others, but that's my philosophy for hiring a PhD student. I'm not hiring a PhD student that does not have master degree.
I think at Santa Clara, we cannot even do that.
Yeah, yeah, but in general.
You do need to have a master's degree, but I have seen people that they did direct PhD and they are very successful as well. To me, it depends on how sure you are about doing a PhD. PhD is a long commitment. So it depends on yourself. And also it depends on how much research experience you have. So how strong your resume is when you're applying for a PhD position. So we have some undergrad students that they have been heavily involved in research, so they have the background in research, but majority, they don't. So masters give you the opportunity to enhance your research capability, and then having a better resume when you're applying for a PhD position, so get a better PhD position. But there are people that they just do direct PhD and they're very successful. I think it depends.
I'd love to chime in here. I mean, I personally got a master's first because I wasn't even sure. Like for me, it's helped to do it one piece at a time. So I agree with my colleagues about the benefits of that. I also agree that sometimes you're more successful. You can be just as successful going straight to PhD. My advice, and it took me many, many, many years to come to this conclusion, so hopefully this will be helpful for somebody. You're not choosing when you're applying. Not really. Okay, when you apply for jobs, when you apply for programs, that's not when you're choosing. You choose from your offers. So finally, when I was applying, I got like my first faculty position was in Florida State, and then my husband, it didn't work for my family there, so I had to reapply back to California and a few other cities. And I applied to every single university in my field that had an opening, got a ton of offers, and chose based on my offers. And that was the smartest thing I've ever done. Choose from your offers. So apply far and wide. Apply. Choose from your offers.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. I think that we can wrap it up now. This was a great hour, and I've loved hearing what you guys have all had to say. If anyone didn't get their questions answered, then I'm sure that the professors would be open to you sending them an email or something, and I'm sure they'd be happy to answer your questions. And so I just like to thank all of you for coming and the professors for coming once again. You all talked about how like you were like that one girl in your engineering class, or like you didn't have that women professor. So like to have you guys be here for all of us and like to have you guys to look up to is great. And we're so excited that you're able to be here and that you're part of the Santa Clara family and we have you. So just thank you so much. I hope that everyone got something out of this. I know I did. And I hope everyone has a great rest of the night in week 9.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
It was great.
Yeah,